Hey everybody, this is part two of what I accidentally cut off. You have to go through a process when you record on YouTube, and I went through the whole process of recording and then uploading and posting and that sort of thing, and I realized half of what I had been recording cut off because I had a technical glitch. So I'm gonna try to finish this up, and we'll see. It's an experiment. We'll see if anybody jumps from the first video to the second one today, but the continuation is July 7th, Monday, July 7th, 2025, and now at approximately 8:50 a.m. my time. And I just listened to my previous recording and it dropped off when I was about to make this point. So the nature of the moment is that every podcaster under the sun, everybody who is of my sort of political bent, ideology wise, who believes in democracy and the law and decency and dignity and the ability for a functioning democracy to operate for all of its people as opposed to just a tiny handful of a billionaire class who, as it turns out, are criminals. And that's really the entirety of the point. So the big sort of quandary at the moment on the flip side of July 4th is this sort of analysis. And you'll see that, yes, it is the same day because I'm still fiddle faddling with my shoulder. And I apologize if it's a distraction. I've got a terrible, terrible, terrible pain right now that I'm working through. So, how do I focus on the moment while I'm in pain? Well, it's like an athlete getting on the field and playing through it. You have to just get through it. So we'll see. Thanks for tuning in, and maybe you'll be more interested to see how I deal with the pain rather than what I'm saying. But so be it. It's social media. So, what really sparked me to do this morning was the fact that, like millions of other people, I myself were like, who wants to celebrate July 4th, considering that we now live in a fascist state? And as I said at the beginning of this, and I've said a million times, is that corruption burns and fuels fascism. And so, how? What do you do as a citizen who believes in what you were taught and you live in your world and you go to work and you provide for your family and you try to save for tuition for your children's college or whatever your circumstances are? Buy a car, you get through life the best you can, and you're looking it around, and it's like you're standing in place while all of a sudden everybody else seems to be on one side of this. I don't know, this almost feels like a piranha circus of MAGAs that are like eating away, devouring the Constitution while at the same time proclamating law and order. What that means is it's authoritarian, it's fascism, 101. And so what we saw in the big beautiful bill is we're going to see 17 million people kicked off of Medicare, Medicaid, that sort of thing, healthcare that's going to literally destroy hospitals in rural areas, as well as millions of elderly people that are on healthcare are going to be thrown by the wayside, and the suffering is going to be immense. And the first question that comes to my mind is, well, how many of them actually voted in the election? And I know I'm not supposed to have judgment on that, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, you get what you deserve sometimes, But at the same time, I also recognize that the Trump confluence of the billionaires and all of the other kleptocrats and everybody that was involved, especially with the MAGA complicit rackets in the red states, were using Jim Crow laws to suppress minority votes. They got rid of 3 million of them on the ballot, which was been a difference between Kamala Harris winning and everything that we're in the midst of now. And by the way, would the world be a lot better if Kamala Harris were the president? Yeah, but we'd still be dealing with billionaires in control. So it's kind of like almost the MAGA zombie apocalypse are doing us a favor to show you what happens when we allow, oligarchs or robber barons or tyrannical powers that be destroy the country of by and for the people. It's like a lesson that you have to, it's like waterboarding. It's torture. It's like, how much can you take? And it depends on who you are. We've seen tens of thousands of federal employees, get kicked off of out of their jobs. And suddenly maybe they're looking at the world a lot different than they would have been otherwise, for example, right? I know during the beginning of Doge, we saw people like, for example, who would be self-proclaimed Republicans who were like, but no, we do a really good job. And what we do is we actually get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. And we're not the problem. But then it's like, okay, guys, when you create a fascist authoritarian state that uses, what do we call it when you choke the government of money, austerity, so that other things can't happen, that the government had already budgeted for. And it goes on and on and on. And what I'm an intersection of, and really what you have to understand is that what I've been trying to tell you in millions of people. And I hope that you like, share, and subscribe. And I know this is kind of like completely out of rhythm this morning because this is part two of one as a result of just technical glitches. But what I'm trying to tell you is that through our work at the con, www.thecon.tv, that's the blueprint for how we destroyed tens of millions of people using the entirety of government to do it. And then we ultimately backdoored tens of trillions of dollars illegally to the engineers of calamity that pulled it all off. And what does that mean? Well, it means that as we are, and we all saw this in the big, beautiful bill, that we're giving billionaires tax cuts to the tune of leveling up a $3.9 trillion addition to the debt that everybody was so concerned about by creating increasing the debt ceiling to accommodate billionaires having more power. But not only are these billionaires people that have way too much power as it stands, i.e., robber barons or the Confederacy, depending on what side you're looking at, but and when I mean plantation, you know, the plantation vertical of the Confederacy, right? I mean, it's slavery. That's how these guys operate, right? And the difference between plantation owners and the likes of robber barons is that okay, the robber barons are just going to pay everybody exploitative wages to the best of their ability to take all they can off the monopoly capitalism front. But in this particular case, using predatory capitalism, that's where we are in the world of 2025, such that they steal, lie, and cheat, and that's against the law. But if you own the law, then the law can't hold you accountable, which is why we have fascism. Corruption burns and fuels fascism. And we gave tens of trillions of dollars in the aftermath of the 2008 great financial crisis, tens of trillions of dollars illegally, basically for free to this billionaire apparatus that bought government. And so, how do you remedy that? Well, first, you got to know what the problem is. And again, you can see it for free because all the American people buy our lies. And what's the value of the truth? Well, the truth is only valuable to those who value truth, quite frankly. That's what we're seeing in this Armageddon biblical times. I mean, I know that millions of you have got your eyes on Texas and, the Camp Mystic and these, poor young evangelical girls that got swept away in a biblical Noah-like flood. Basically they built a camp in a flood zone, and then Governor Greg Abbott took away, the NOLA administration to be able to predict flash floods and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like, okay, you can fill in your blanks about how you come out on that in terms of consequence, but it's cause and effect. There's no question about it. Oh, drill, baby, drill. Hey, don't worry about extreme weather. It's not real. It's not happening. Hey, hopes and prayers kind of thing. But all of that being equal, and I was listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan's Texas Flood over the weekend, which was incredible thinking about it. But, that just underscores all of the other kind of insanity, right? Of MAGA and the MAGA zombie apocalypse and what these fools are all about, particularly on the notion of Armageddon and the rapture and all of this magical thinking. And, it's playing out and they've got control for what? A retarded, stupid orange orangutan turd that we should flush down the toilet, but instead has absolute power. And what are they going to do with the big, beautiful bill besides, kicking off tens of millions of people from their health care? Well, they're going to stick more money into detention scenarios and more budget for ICE, which, by the way, was illegal to begin with. And yeah, but who's stopping them, right? I mean, a lot of times I'm reminded of this one of my favorite films back in the '70s called The Longest Yard. I liked this before Adam Sandler, if you remember the '90s version, but it was Burt Reynolds back in the '70s, and it was built around, this quarterback, this all-star quarterback who threw a game on gambling, which, in the rites of passage among criminals, the one thing you don't do is fuck with America's game. which like was a great evolution of character because of just the nature of that movie. And God, did I love that movie, Mean Machine, for those who can remember that. But what I'm talking about with Alligator Alley, or what are these detention centers down in Florida called? Alligator Alcatraz, I think they're calling it. And then there's going to be a Bear Alcatraz up in Alaska, where they're going to throw all of these immigrants in there, and it's going to be like blood sport, quite frankly, And that's kind of the nature of what we're seeing from Trump is like these amalgamations of all of these cultural kind of iconic kind of things to make it kind of an entertainment deal where everybody is like eating their popcorn, seeing what's going to happen to some poor guy who ends up, in a detention camp, which is a concentration camp. But the point is they're going to, fund ICE $85 billion, which is north of like, I don't know, 13 countries' military budgets, the top 13 outside of the United States. And they're going to do that for what? Fascism. While they're going to starve people and close down hospitals in rural areas. I mean, guys, the demons have overrun the gates and the barbarians at the gates and whatever analogy you want to use. And it's just an absolute monstrosity of all of the things that are taking place. And so, again, what I've been showing people because of our work is how corporate corruption works. And by the way, I did a kind of a weird wordsmith recently where it was like corruption, cooperation, corporation. Kind of weird that those words sound so similar, but when you put them in continuity, it's kind of like, that all makes sense. But I digress. Because what's the remedy? Because once you understand the problem, can you only fix the problem? And where I'm coming from, and I have been coming from forever, is that we've got many absolute monstrous crises on our hands all at the same time. I prefaced the flood over the weekend, right? We've got climate disaster. We'll continue to have climate disaster. It was only like what last fall that we had all of these hurricanes that the Trump people and the MAGA were blaming on, like the scientists at NOLA being able to control the weather and then have it zero down on the RV camps, Tornado Alley sort of thing. And that there was, I think Alex Jones was saying that there was a way that they were controlling the weather to be able to pinpoint it to hurt, people who are Trump supporters kind of thing. And they were blaming Biden. So, of course, we got to blame Trump and his cronies for all the madness that just took place in Texas. Yeah, but they are literally responsible for it. But I use these as antidotes to fully, contextualize the picture that, okay, well, if you know the problem and you know that millions of people don't want kings and you know that based on July 4th that learned men in the founding fathers created a separation of powers through the Bill of Rights that would ultimately lead 13 years later to the Constitution, which created separation of powers so that this could never happen. But of course, here we are. Why? Because absolute power corrupts absolutely. Why? Because money is power. Because of what I'm trying to tell you, we've provided tens of trillions of dollars illegally to the criminal class that completely bought our government and completely control everything, i.e., corruption, burrs, and fuels fascism. So, again, once you understand the problem, can you then remedy the problem? And what we're seeing all over the place, and what you need to understand, is that, for example, people who are progressive or democratic, who believe in the law, believe in decency, believe in dignity, don't want forever wars, don't want systemic prison racism in prisons, that sort of thing. A lot of people got a jolt of hope from this guy, this 30-year-old kid who basically ran for mayor and won the primary in New York based on, what do they call it? I can't remember the name of the voting process when you have the different votes that can maneuver. It's not just a kind of a duopoly kind of situation. Why can't voting? It's coming to me because my colleague Roseanne Raviola, ranked choice voting. There we go, ranked choice voting. So this guy shocks the world. He's a democratic socialist. He's a Muslim. He's against all odds. He speaks openly, apparently, against Israel in their, genocide in Gaza. And I know many Jews don't want to use the word genocide, but if the shoe fits, I mean, my God. But the long and the short of it is, on Zohran Mondani, this out of nowhere victory has just electrified people that are like, oh my God, we have a chance to beat this, Republican MAGA onslaught of corruption that has completely turned us into a totalitarian state, which I would add is a techno feudalism that Yanis Varoufakis has been, informing us about for like the last 5 years, basically. And yeah, they're all on the same page. You've got the techno feudalists, which are, basically Peter Thiel at Palantir, and then of course Elon Musk and the tech bros and all of the stuff that came out of the PayPal mafia, because they are all angling in, my friends, on central bank digital currency for themselves, which is part of the scam of the crypto shit that, transactional diaper Don got in on. That's put $10 billion dollars in his pocket when I think the presidency, you make $400,000 a year, plus you're set up for life and you get to fly around on Air Force One and be the most powerful person in the world. That's not enough for Diaper Don. He's backdooring tens of billions of dollars into his own pocket through breaking the emoluments clause and everything else, because the stupid Supreme Court, which is owned by billionaires, that basically created what we call the unitary presidency, the executive presidency, sorry, because that's what it's always, the imperial presidency, i.e., that when he's doing functions for the government, supposedly, that he's above the law, which is just absolutely insane. It's just corruption. It's weasels. It's degenerates. It's freak shows. It's the kind of people that proclaim God and then rape people on the clock. They're just sick, perverted freak show people, and we need to call it out for what it is, because they're sickening, and they certainly don't have any sort of connect corollary to God, which these huge megachurch people that get people all hallelujah and Donald Trump is our savior, when the guy's gone through 6 bankruptcies and 5 deferments, or maybe it's the other way around. But they're saying this guy's patriotic and a business genius. He's nothing of the sort. He's a clown. He's a dirtbag. He's all of those things that, one of my favorite characters, Robert De Niro, characters, real people, Robert De Niro called out for the last, basically 10 years. And I know I look weird because my shoulder is just really hurting. So, where am I at in the conversation? It's just an enormous tidal wave of insanity that we're all in the midst of. So, how do you plant your flag? How do you force your way through this madness? And how do we create a situation where we turn the tables? Well, that's what I've been doing the whole time. And I've got 2 buckets that you need to be aware of. The first is the New Untouchables. The New Untouchables, you can find at thenewuntouchables.com. You can find it on Substack. We're going to roll out a whole bunch of new stuff, but we also have a once a week, panel discussion, which includes Mark Dan, the former AG of the state of Ohio, who got the only racketeering conviction of these crimes that I'm talking about in the entire country. And then William K. Black, who is the ultimate criminologist in this country, who took down 7,000 white-collar executives during the savings and loan crisis, which was tiny in comparison to the great financial crisis and everything that's happened since. But he knows how this stuff works, and he got sidelined because we have seen billionaires completely control the system for now over a decade and a half, quite frankly. And so they sideline guys like Bill Black, and miraculously I found him. And he put all this stuff together for me, and I've become a conduit. And that's why I'm the producer with the $71 trillion truth, because I know what they got away with to create this madness that we're all in the midst of. And everybody's looking around in circles like, how is it possible that billionaires can get a $3 trillion tax cut while we throw 17 million people off of healthcare? Because of what I'm telling you. Because everything is a lie, because the courts are in on it, because it's a complicit racketeering enterprise. And I was going to make this point earlier, and I don't think I had a chance to really bring this full circle. But Sean P. Diddy Combs was basically acquitted on Friday of the most serious charges against him, which included racketeering. Now, when I looked at the trial and I saw the predicate acts of everything that was involved, I thought to myself, how is this prosecution team of 7 females, they weren't able to pull off what was obvious to anybody looking at it, that these freak-offs that included, basically roofing and raping the likes of Cassie Williams, that it required more than one person to pull it off. But yet they didn't really set it up as a racketeering situation. They talked out of both sides of their mouth, and they created a scenario that it was like about domestic violence, but they weren't charging him with domestic violence. But they didn't make the case of the racketeering, supposedly, even though I saw predicate acts all over the place. But they didn't do the normal flipping that's associated with this whole thing, where you get the lieutenants and the consigliaries and so on and so forth, until you can get to the Don, which in this case would be Sean Puffy Combs, not to be confused with Don the Con, Diaper Don, Taco Tits Don, the guy who runs the presidency of the corrupt states of America, which is nothing but a racketeering enterprise, because the Supreme Court's in on it, Congress is in on it, the media is in on it. It's nothing but racketeering. How did Donald Trump get $10 billion through breaking emoluments clause and completely destroying the Constitution in a span of about 4 months now? to create a Gestapo-like scenario of alligator Alcatraz and bear Alcatraz because of racketeering. And yeah, if we had the functioning of the United States legal division of the Department of Justice, yeah, that would happen. But we don't because Pam Bondi is in on it. Again, it's a criminal racketeering enterprise that has overrun the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigations. And I know they fuck with my phone all the time, and I'm sure they're listening to this and they're probably quashing everything that I am, which is why you have to share and spread and like and subscribe and hear everything that I'm saying. Is it too hard for you to understand all of these different elements? No. Can you hold two elements in your head at the same time? Most of you can. If you can walk gum and chew chew gum and walk at the same time, or however that saying goes. Didn't do that very well. But yeah, that's what you have to do because it's all the same pattern. And the nature of Sean P. Diddy Combs getting away with the freak off, just as what the American people are thinking. And most of us are in on it like this, right? They're kind of like, okay, well, if the government's not going to make the case directly, we're not going to make the case for them because that's not what we're supposed to do as jurors. And the way we're looking at this is like, well, wait a second. Didn't Cassie want to be a superstar? Didn't she get $30 million for hanging out with Sean P. Diddy Combs, and didn't she get a record contract and everything else? Okay, yeah, maybe she got raped and roofied and gang raped and all of those horrible things. But wait, I've got text here that said she wanted to be involved with it. So she was a complicit. Okay, maybe. And there's some truth to that, right? But the way I look at it, honestly, if I was going to make that sort of corollary to the 2008 great financial crisis, I wonder if it ever occurred to anybody based on this type of stuff that people who got into houses that were buying more house than they could afford, or they were buying multiple houses and they were flipping it because they were incentivized to do so because people were making easy money doing that because they could get easy liar loans and they could flip it and they could, increase the cost of the houses. It would manipulate the entire market and it blew up the entire system because of just unbelievable stupidity at every step of the way. And that's what we show you on the con at thecon.tv. But could they potentially be complicit in their own demise? Well, yeah, but millions of other people weren't. Millions of other people got set up in the situation because they refinanced their houses because they were told their house was worth X amount and they got X amount of money to be able to, if they were elderly, for example, pay for medications and things that they could otherwise not afford because they didn't have increase in the value of, whatever um, uh, you know, their, what do we call it when you live off of your pension and so forth. It's kind of like a static income, but the long and the short of it is it wasn't growing as fast as the appraisal value of their houses. So people rolled it into, basically the casino and not knowing. And then all of a sudden it blew up and they got taken down and they got booted out of their house. And many people led to suicide or divorces or homelessness and all that kind of thing. And so were they complicit in their own demise? That's the question. Like Cassie Williams, did they want a house and a piece of the American dream and they didn't have enough common sense to understand what the value of money is and they weren't going to get involved and they didn't get greedy and all of the other things. So, are there somebody that we actually think got set up and played and roofied and raped? And do we care? Well, in the case of the P. Diddy Combs trial, no, most Americans don't. The jury, which was 8 men and 4 women, they were like, well, it's not racketeering, even though it was absolutely racketeering. But they're like, no, no, this is a rich guy. You're trying to, destroy this dude and everything else. And it's like, just Americans are weird. Americans are just, I think Americans have lost their freaking minds, man, because there's no character. There is no integrity. It's like, is there a way I can find a loophole to take advantage of a situation so that I can get mine? I mean, it's gross. It's disgusting. I hate it. I hate everything about it. And if you hate it too, if you hate it that it's like you don't want to live a lie, you don't want to live in a lying country, you don't want to live in a country where, a guy that should have been in prison 4 decades ago by the name of Donald Trump, who's a con, can be at the apex and get, a new 747 from the likes of UAE and get away with it. I mean, that was like, what, 2 weeks ago? And not to mention, like, look, now Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world, who's nothing but a welfare queen, honestly, as vetted out because of the big beautiful bill, because he's going nuts, because he's like, oh my God, you're getting rid of all of the initiatives that I depend on, both on SpaceX and everything else, and now you're cutting the tube for me, and so suddenly I'm going to be like, I'm going to create my own party and it's front page news in the New York Times. I don't give a flying fuck what Elon Musk does. I hate the guy. Honestly, I used to be the biggest fan of the guy, but the guy is just a neo-fascist techno bro freak that's a ketamine junkie that's got multiple baby mamas. And it's like the guy has zero capacity to understand what the hell the debt is, let alone entrepreneurialism. And even though everybody's like, oh, the guy's the richest guy in the world, so that therefore we got to tip the cap because that guy's smarter than everybody else. No, he's not. The system made him. You know, he was at the right time at the right place after PayPal, and he got some money and he invested in Tesla. This is the work of many other guys. And the government wanted electric vehicles to replace, the old fossil fuel paradigm. And that's the direction we went after the 2008 great financial crisis. And because of all of the nature of control fraud and what we show you in the con, and what I've been trying to educate people on, is what made him the richest guy in the world, which is socialism for billionaires. And so what I say is we're not a democracy. We're a corporate fascist state undergirded by a criminal syndicate that uses the full faith and credit of the United States to guarantee the mafiocracy. Hello? That's what everybody in the podcast arena can't put together because they don't understand the elements of the crime. They don't even understand what the remedy of the crime is. They don't even know what to call the crime because they're so overwhelmed they can't see the forest for the trees, because we've gotten dumber and dumber and dumber, and more dumb people broadcast more myth truths and more lies and deception and diabolical scheming, and the smart guys are getting away with it that are well funded. And I'm offering you an alternative to that, which is called the Clean New Deal. And you can find that at thecleannewdeal.org. So if you're disgusted with fascism, if you don't accept corruption, if you think that this whole thing's got to come down like the house of cards that it is, and you want to be a part of a grand, let's call it a tidal wave resurgence of the American dream that purges the misery of tyranny to create a renaissance of possibility, well, I'm your gateway to that. Not because I'm the savior, but because I am the deliverer. Why? Because I've spent 13 years putting all of these things together, which are what the full capacity of the United States with the Department of Justice and the FBI and the SEC and all of these other elements that get paid $90 billion a year to prevent everything that happened, failed because of revolving door, okay? So if there's a way things collapsed, do you think there's a way to rebuild? Of course. It's called systems. You just have to understand what the systems are and what they do. So if you get the blueprint of the crime, i.e. the con, at www.thecon.tv, and then it goes into the Clean New Deal. And the new Untouchables is the bridge, okay? But the cleannewdeal.org, and I got to finish up with this because I got many other things to do, and I hope this is going to electrify you, and I hope you like, share, and subscribe. Call me, join me, unite with me, because that's what it's going to take, is millions of us coming together to be on the same page, to be able to break the grip of this misery of tyranny. And the way we do that is we go after the money first. So that you have to have a knowledge of four questions to be able to fully encapsulate what the Rubik's Cube is of all the pieces that come together. You got to ask yourself the question, what is qualified immunity? What is presidential immunity? What is judicial immunity? And what is the Electoral College? Once you understand what those questions are, can you then understand the precepts of the Clean New Deal, which begins first and foremost with the most important thing on our society, because this is God, money. We have got to create a new Glass-Steagall. And I say new Glass-Steagall for those of you who are just hearing this for the first time, that basically separates the ability of our financial system to gamble with other people's money. OPP is the most dangerous three letters in all of the world, because when you can't see the way the game is played, the forest for the trees, the three-card Monty, you're going to get raped and pillaged just like Cassie Williams. And everybody's going to be like, ah, ha, ha, she got played. No, it's not funny, man. It's absolutely the end of everything, quite frankly, because we've got more crises that we can keep up with, but they are all fixable and remedied because of what I'm going to lay out to you. So first and foremost, a new Glass-Steagall. You separate commercial banking from investment banking, but with the caveat that you cannot ever, in the history of the future of the freaking rest of human civilization, use the full faith and credit of the United States and its incredibly rarefied position as the world's reserve currency to be used to guarantee criminality and racketeering on a global scale. It's ridiculous. Nobody in a million years would vote for that, but because of the murkiness of how things work, and you don't understand the law, and you don't understand geopolitics, and you don't understand history, Do you not understand that we remedied this back after the Great Depression, which is why I'm calling it the new Glass-Steagall Act, because the former Glass-Steagall Act basically figured out what took place in the Great Depression through a gentleman by the name of Ferdinand Pecora, who put two and two together and realized, oh my God, it's racketeering. So you got to align interest, and you can't enable banks to gamble with other people's money behind the scenes because you can't see how the three-card Monte is being played. You got to align incentives, and you cannot, again, allow the full faith and credit of the United States to guarantee commodity trading or speculation in real estate. And by the way, that's in the statutes of Federal Reserve Act 13.3, which provides the United States government and its incredibly exorbitant position as the world's reserve currency to be able to provide liquidity in times of crises. Yeah, a hurricane is one thing. A global war is another thing. Racketeering, are you kidding me? But that's what I'm telling you we did. We've spent since 2009 over $71 trillion into this apparatus that created this madness. So you've got to be able to say that literally you cannot use the full faith and credit of the United States to guarantee the mafiocracy. You can't do it. The flip side of that, and you might be thinking to yourself, well, wait a second, what about Citizens United? Isn't Bernie Sanders saying it's all about money and politics? Yeah, that's the flip side of the coin. That's what they did in 2012 after, going back to what, McCutcheon versus FCC in 1976. By the time we get to 2009, we get Citizens United, which basically legalizes corruption, which provided this backdoor to the Supreme Court and all of these other elements of these 501c4s, where these billionaires basically piss on your head telling you it's rain. Well, they control our democracy for their robber baron effort or Confederacy effort, depending on where you're looking at it from, right? The long and the short of it is it's just absolute power corrupts absolutely. And when a group of men discover plunder, they create a legal code to authorize it and a moral code to glorify it. This is history. We're right smack dab in the middle of the things that created the revolutions of the Western democracies to begin with, to break the yoke of imperialism, i.e. the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, i.e. the 4th of July. It's not just about hearing Neil Diamond sing "We're Coming to America" and you get misty-eyed because you see these beautiful fireworks. It's because of everything that I'm telling you. And so, yeah, first you get rid of Glass-Steagall, then you get rid of Citizens United. Then we have to demonstrate how $71 trillion was looted from the full faith of the credit of the United States into this mafiocracy. We're not a democracy. We're a corporate fascist state that uses the full faith and credit of the United States to guarantee the mafiocracy. That's now fueling fascism. Shortcut, corruption burrs and fuels fascism. Do you get it? That's how it works. And there's people like me and many others who know how the system works, so we can re-engineer the system to where we become, again, a government of, by, and for the people to crush corruption and fascism. That's the gateway to do this, okay? Because who's in control of the guns? What are we seeing because of the big, beautiful bill? Because of, given ICE budget to create alligator Alcatraz and bear Alcatraz, and to create the ICE budget where these guys are behind face masks, unmarked, to basically grab anybody off the street. And there are nuances about people who are here legally and not illegally and all of those sorts of things. I mean, it's a mess because the corporations of the United States have been exploiting third world labor in our agriculture system and our, meat packing and our slaughterhouses and everything else really my whole life, and much longer than I've been alive. It's part of our economy. You see these like democratic hustlers that are like, okay, oh my God, we're all about humanity and everything else. But you know what? We want our illegal aliens, because otherwise, how are we going to keep our tomatoes at 19 cents a pound or something? I mean, I'm using some stupid math there, but you get my point. So the third precept of the Clean New Deal is we're going to demonstrate how $71 trillion was stolen to give billionaires free money so they could skull fuck the United States. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the tables on them with you and millions of us, if you, me, and everybody you see who isn't a Nazi, that believes in dignity, integrity, decency, liberty, and justice, and sustainability. If we merge in this whole plan, we will turn the tables on the misery of tyranny to create the renaissance of possibility, because we've got the technology to be able to recreate the paradigm. This is the ultimate enemy to the fossil fuel diaper Don. Let's go America great. What's it called? Jim Crow America, of America first, that Donald Trump and his dad and his granddad were all a part of, And by the way, I do know this, from on high. Donald Trump's grandfather was a pimp. He literally was. And then, of course, his father was a socialist that was screwing over black people. Yeah, these guys are real pieces of work. And that's what created Donald Trump. And he's our president, which is transactional president, not president, transactional Don, because he's the head of a criminal racketeering enterprise. And all bets are off, man. We're living in a racketeering enterprise of the greatest democracy in the history of the world because the law means nothing. And so, if we were to create an economic engine that creates the productive capacity, we'd recreate the American middle class, which is the American dream, which is dynamism, which is part of the Clean New Deal. And so from that point forward, you remember my first four questions? Well, then you got to get rid of qualified immunity, which means cops can't shoot you and get away with it if they murder you. I mean, go figure, right? Are we supposed to be a nation of laws where nobody's supposed to be above the law, but the cops can shoot to kill and they're not held accountable for that? Ooh, there's a problem. What about the judges? Supreme Court judges who are, playing ball for billionaires can do so and fly an upside down flag and be a part of the insurrection and basically betray the Constitution, 14th Amendment, Section 3, and, completely etch a sketch the Civil War. I mean, yeah, that's what they've done because they know you don't care. They know you're not going to do anything about it, or you're not going to be effective, not at least like the technocrats of Project 2025, but I'm giving you the platform to be able to do it because I know how this system works and I'm connected to people who know how to turn the tables on this stuff. So yeah, the $71 trillion truth into getting rid of qualified immunity, judicial immunity, and of course, presidential immunity. No kings, right? Come on, Donald Trump, the Mad King from Mad Magazine, that's what it is. He is the Mad Magazine Mad King. That's what it's all about. No, that's just not okay. And we gotta bust that up. And so yes, to be able to do all of that, in addition to the biggest problem with our democratic system is, of course, the electoral college, which is the other side of that, because that just means the minority that has a lot of technocrats can completely play everybody else and nobody knows what the hell's going on. So they basically destroy the capacity of a democracy to rule of by and for the people. That's the bottom line. And so you do all of that. And the final precepts of the Clean New Deal is you've got to get 13 judges on the Supreme Court to basically rectify this Roberts Justice Court of just, corrupt freaking worms that have just completely betrayed the United States. And then we got to make those guys accountable. And then finally, you cannot allow Congress to front run and participate in insider trading as it results to what the government is going to fund so that they can put money in their pockets like, yeah, Nancy Pelosi did for many years. Yeah, that's the second half of what it is that I'm trying to tell you. People, I've been delivering this message for, I think I'm up to 617 Truth Bomb Refs. So the places you go to wrap your head around, to fully actualize everything I'm telling you, first and foremost, and I'm sorry to give you a little bit of homework, but I'm trying to pull back the curtain so you can see Oz. This is the way we purge the corruption of deception, the pollution of corruption and deception by the clarity of truth. Because when you have the truth, you live in light. When you live a lie, inside you die. When you have the truth, you're bulletproof. When you live a lie, and you're depraved. When you live a lie, you're depraved. Stop lying. Stop buying lies. Check out thecon.tv, thenewuntouchables.com, the Clean New Deal, and we'll completely reboot the world. Everything I've been saying for now years and years and years is actualized in millions of your brains, but you still can't see the forest for the trees, and I'm not your savior. The truth is, I'm just the deliverer. Become a nuclear reaction vector for the truth, and we together will force and plow it through the darkness of this insanity. My friends, thank you so much again. 3 things you got to check out: thecon.tv, thenewuntouchables.com, and the Clean New Deal. We got the answers. We just need millions of you to get it and go, my God, somebody's got a plan. I don't work for billionaires. I work for liberty and justice for all and my grandchildren's future and the future of humanity and the future of liberty and justice for all. That's who Patrick Lovell, the producer, is. Onwards and upwards, amigos.